You're listening to the Uplevel Your Online Business Show, where wealth is empowering, purpose is crucial, and high vibes are non-negotiable. And now, here's your host, certified business coach and practical woo strategist, Sara J Loureiro.
Welcome back to another episode of the Uplevel Your Online Business Show with me, Sarah. This is an episode that I am recording at 11 a.m. on a Friday while I am still in my pajamas. I'm just being very transparent here. And one of the reasons why I wanted to say that as well is because of the subject matter of this episode. And I think that it really does need to be said to fully show you what's possible. Of course, I could be in my pajamas at 11 a.m. on a Friday, but then working at 9 p.m. on a Friday. But I felt like this was very appropriate with everything that I'm about to talk about. Now, I'm not usually in my pajamas at 11 a.m. on a Friday. In fact, I'm usually up around 6 or 7 in the morning. I go to the gym, I come home, and I'm usually working at around 10 a.m. So this is not necessarily common for me. However, I wanted to talk about this in relation to a Facebook ad, a meta ad that I actually have up about how I make $500K or over $500K a year consistently while working around 20 hours a week. And it's not to say that every single week I work 20 hours. In fact, there are some weeks that I work less. There's some weeks that I work more, but in order to maintain what I make, what I earn, that's really all I need to work. Now, I know that for a lot of people, this sounds kind of absurd. And what I also want to say is I was just on a lovely chat with one of my friends who I met in a mastermind, who actually works around 10 to 15 hours a week and makes over $1 million a year. And I will also say that in my conversation with her, she admitted that she actually works way less than 10 to 15 hours, but sometimes she doesn't actually want to tell people that because she feels too scammy. And I would also say the same. I think that this week I actually worked way less than 20 hours, but I don't want to say that because I really do feel like on average I work around 20 to maintain what it is that I currently make. And then sometimes I will work a little bit above that. And that's just because I really do love my work. But I think it's also really important to say here that there are some people who are totally lying about this kind of stuff online. But I think it's just very interesting that I did have this conversation with a friend of mine who sometimes works 1 or 2 hours a week and makes over $1 million a year. And she doesn't like having that type of messaging online because she doesn't feel good about it and she doesn't really want to promote that. So to me personally, I feel like working 20, 25 hours a week is actually quite healthy. I think it's a really great standard to set for someone. And I also feel like it's a good amount of time to work without feeling like you don't have a purpose. And this is another thing about my friend who I was speaking to, who some weeks only works 1 to 3 hours. She actually doesn't like that. She wants to work more because she doesn't feel like she has a purpose when she works 1 to 3 hours a week. So that's also my intention with this episode, is not to be like, oh yeah, we can all make a whole bunch of money by working the least amount possible. But it's also, how much do you want to be working and how much of a purpose do you want to have in your life that is around your work? Because if you only want to be working 1 to 3 hours a week, it took her, 10 years to get to that point. It took me about 7 years to get to the point where I am right now. But if you want to do that, all the power to you. I actually do think that working 20 hours a week is pretty realistic, and I want to explain exactly how. So how did I get here? How exactly does this work? What do these hours look like? So I actually did come from a 40-hour work week job. I think I was paid for maybe 37 hours a week. Can't remember. I was on salary back in Toronto, back in 2017 was the last time I worked for someone else. And I can tell you that I'm way more productive. I want to repeat that, with my 20 to 25 hour work weeks than I was with my 40 hour work weeks. A lot of the time in my 40 hour work weeks, I literally just had to sit in my office just so that I could be there. So I needed to be present. I needed to be available just in case my manager ever wanted to call me, just in case one of my students ever needed to have access to me. But all in all, I'm way more productive working 20 hours a week than working 40. And so that's the first myth buster that I really want to spell out here is working more hours doesn't actually mean that you're getting more output from your work. So more input doesn't always equal more output. It needs to be productive work. Rest is also productivity. And so the times that I go to the beach, the times that I go to the gym, the times that I sit in prayer or meditation, those are also times that are productive that allow me to work those 20 hours a week, but work really, really good hours within those 20 hours per week. So productivity can also be rest. Rest is also productivity. And just because you work more doesn't necessarily mean that you're creating the same or more of an output. So I was working 40 hours a week, didn't actually work more or harder or smarter than I am working 20 hours a week now. 20 hours a week now is actually very strategic. Very, very strategic 20 hours a week. And might I also add that I do my own sales calls. So I currently do not have a closer on my team. So here's how it works. Here's how it kind of all comes down. I have someone who helps me to do my content in my business. And so I will spend about 1 or 2 hours a week spelling out all of the content that I want her to create. She's been working in my business for over a year now, so she knows exactly how to do it. So all of that is very, very well dialed in. So I spend 1 to 2 hours a week focusing on that. Then if I need to do any B-roll, so if I need to do any videos, any of that type of content, I will spend around 1 hour a week doing that type of content. So there we go. We're officially at 3 hours with all of that. Then, because once again, this is another thing that I really want to dispel as a myth, because I've been working at this specific business for 7 years. So there's a lot of things that I have in this business that I just repurpose, including content. And anytime that I do a new live, anytime I do a new launch, a lot of that is from repurposing things that I've done before. And so if I need to repurpose something, once again, I have people on my team who I ask to repurpose. So if you are in a scaling phase of your business, just know that this is something that you can also very well do. And so that isn't even an hour of my time. That's literally a minute of my time. I will just type into my Slack channel with my team, and I will just ask someone to repurpose something, create a due date for it. That might take me 5 minutes. One of the biggest things that I spend my time with is obviously client work, because I want my clients to feel appreciated. I want to make sure that the things that I have inside of my program are up to date. And so I would add there that I spend at an absolute minimum 5 hours a week on client work. Sometimes it might be a little bit more than that, but that's just client work. That's just getting back to clients in all of the different channels that I have clients in, getting back to them one-to-one, getting back them into group settings, sending voice notes, things like that. So right there, we are at about 8 hours a week. Then I have 3 hours every other week currently on group coaching. So let's just say that those are every week. So those would bring me up to 11 hours of work. Okay. Then I have about 1 to 2 hours per week of teamwork. So let's say that that's 13. And then I have about 7 hours a week that I spend roughly, sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more, on sales calls. So all in all, in the totality of my business, in terms of creating content, getting back to clients, selling my services, and doing Zoom calls, I spend about 20 hours a week. That's it. I look at that number, and sometimes I look at some of the negative comments on this specific ad where it shows me on the beach and it shows how I do this. And I'm like, am I lying? Like, is this actually something that is not truthful? But if I look at this number, in some weeks, this is actually less. It's actually less than 20 in some weeks. Other weeks, it's actually more than 20, and I'm totally fine with that, and I absolutely love that. Especially when I'm on holiday or when I tend to take a lot of time and I go to Portugal in the summer to visit my family, that number tends to drop a little bit more. But some weeks it increases, and it'll increase to 30, even sometimes maybe even 40 hours a week. I don't mind. I actually like working. But I think my point here is to share that that's actually a very accurate number. Now, I also have assistant coaches who help, and they do very lengthy one-to-one calls with my clients. And they also do reviews for my clients. And so we work in unison, which is why I also have team meetings, weekly team meetings with them to make sure that we're all on the same page. And we all collectively help clients. I also have someone on my team who helps me book calls, apart from all of my automation. So all of the systems that I have in my business really help to also bring people onto sales calls, bring people into my programs. And when you have more systems and automations in your business, well, yeah, you're literally just taking away the need to have someone work all of those hours where you can just have emails, when you can have follow-ups, when you can have many chat sequences, do all of that work for you. And so I actually divided up the amount of hours that I would need to be working per day in order for me to work 20 hours a week. And that's actually 4 hours a day. And so here's another thing is they typically aren't 4 hours that I do back to back. So I might do 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening, or there might be some Fridays, for example, that I take the entire day off, or I might do a Monday morning when I work, and then I realize that I've finished my work by Monday afternoon. So those are relatively the terms by which I work. And I also want to say here that this is to maintain my current level of business. If I want to go above my current level of business, which is something that I'm starting to do, I will probably attach an additional 5 to 10 hours a week on my business. So that's not necessarily to maintain. That's something that I do to grow. So for example, right now I'm growing a secondary Instagram account. So that's going to take a little bit more time for me. I am going to be doing a little bit more on ads. And so that's once again something that I'm going to tack on additionally in terms of time. And so from now on, my ideal work week might look like 25 to 30 hours a week. But if I ever just wanted to kind of come back to what I have now, what I have now literally only takes me around 20 hours a week to do. And I think that it's very hard for a lot of people to believe because they don't understand the power of leverage, and they truly don't understand the power of leverage in terms of teams and also in terms of automations. And it's very, very difficult for someone with a very scarce money mindset and someone who has a very narrow view of how to make money and how to make money without exchanging time for money, for them to truly see how scalable an online business can be. And so that's why I also really do understand these people, because I used to be one of them. I never used to understand this until I actually stepped into this myself and I saw just how simple a lot of this is. I mean, I've had friends in this industry who've worked 5 or 10 hours a week and make 10K months. And it's very simple to do. I mean, it's also hard because you have to really put yourself out there. But once you have the systems in place to do it, it's not impossible to do. And I think that I really do feel for the people who don't believe it, because those people automatically are just never going to have it. Because if you don't believe that you can have something, then you're never going to create the work and, create the pathways in your brain to believe that it's possible for you. So my hope is with this podcast episode that you see that this isn't actually something that's out in the clouds at all. Like, this is something that's very logical and something that's very possible. Of course, it's like I said, I didn't just wake up one day and decide that I was going to have a 20-hour-a-week business. It's something that took years of me planning out and really building in terms of trial and error. And if I were to start all over again, could I still do this? Well, I'd probably have to have a lot of capital up front in order to be able to invest in the team and in the ad spend that I do right now to eventually get it to this place. So yes, I could. However, there's a lot of sacrifice that would probably go in, considering the fact that, if I were to start it all over, I wouldn't have the 7 years of a foundation that I do. So that's all the transparency that I have for you about this today. And I really do hope that this helps you to really understand, just how effective it could be to have team and have systems to create a scalable business model, because you don't need to necessarily just exchange your time for money. You can actually go way above and beyond that. So I'd love to hear how you felt about this episode. Let me know if you had any light bulb moments for yourself. You can reach out to me on Instagram. It's at Sara without an H, JLoureiro. And you can also reach out to me on my website, samename.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Uplevel Your Online Business Show. If you enjoy our show and would like the show notes and free goodies about how to grow your online coaching business, head over to sarajloureiro.com for more information. We hope you'll tune in next time.